Olá pessoal, aqui é a Isabel, professora de português de vocês. Alright, so this is going to be our first class in the flipped classroom model that I plan to introduce in Portuguese 102. In other words, I'm going to upload videos online that explain the grammar on your book, and you're going to watch these videos and follow my explanation and my examples. And then when we meet in class, you can always ask me questions, but mainly the purpose of the classroom time would be to practice what you studied on your own at home. Okay, so today we are going to learn about stem changing verbs, okay? And pretty much stem changing verbs are verbs that conjugate as a regular verb, okay? But not in the first person, singular, okay? So just to remind you, we're talking about here present tense. So we have different groups of stem changing verbs, okay? And the first one is the one that changes the vowel from E to I in the penultimate syllabus of the verb, okay? So in other words, the syllabus before the last. So notice here that the verb competir, right, is divided into 3 syllables, okay? Com is one, P is the other, ti is the other, okay? In general, syllabus division in Portuguese is quite simple. For the most part, it follows the pattern of a consonant vowel or consonant vowel consonant, okay? There are exceptions, but for the most part, that's usually the pattern. All right, so remember again that this irregularity of these stem changing verbs are restricted to the first person. So, for instance, if you want to say that I compete, right? Eu. So, following the rule that you already know, you would just repeat the verb up to the IR part, delete IR, and then add the ending of present tense verbs. So you would write something like eu competo. It makes sense in the rule, but it's actually incorrect. So you would have to change you would have to go to the penultimate syllabus and change the E to the I. Eu compito. Okay? Notice that if you want to say the same thing, so for instance, they compete, it won't change. So you would actually just follow the regular verbs conjugation. So, a gente, right? So informal we, a gente compete. So it wouldn't really change. You would just have to add the E, that it's conjugation of a third person singular. Very good. So similarly, you can do the same thing for verbs that are that change from O to U. So, for example, the verb descobrir means to discover, to find out. So, if you want to say, you know, I found gold on the backyard. So, not found, I'm sorry, I'm talking about present. I find gold regularly. Let's say something like this. Eu. So, instead of descobro, you would say descubro ouro no solo às vezes. Ou às vezes. Ok? Às vezes com o acento, with the accent. Anyway, so I find gold on the soil sometimes. So the example is not the best, but you got it, right? Very good. So this is the first type of stem changing verbs. So let's go on to the second one. Okay, so now we're talking about stem changing verbs where the first person of these verbs are very different. So they don't. It's not only about changing the vowels, but it's really a different conjugation that you have to remember. But once again, the irregularity of these verbs are restricted to the first person. So, for instance, the verb pedir, which is to ask for something, okay? So instead of saying eu pedo, that doesn't really make sense in Portuguese, the conjugation of this particular verb is eu perco minhas coisas sempre. So I always lose my things. So the conjugation for perder is perco. So that's the third verb here on the list. All right, so let's go back here. Hold on a second. Okay, so the other one would be, for example, ouvir, to listen to. Eu ouço, com C cedilha, with a cedil, and I'll add this in 1 second. Eu ouço música. I listen to music. And then, for the second verb on the list, eu peço ajuda. I ask for help. Also, you have the cedil there, and I'll add it in a second. And also you have the last one, poder, which means to be able to. Eu posso. Ok. Então, deixa eu só adicionar isso. Temos acento aqui no U e uma cedilha. We have a cedil and an accent in música, and then one in peço. Okay, so this is the second type of stem changing verbs. The last type of stem changing verbs, you can actually picture these verbs as being completely regular. Okay, in the sense that, well, it's not completely regular, but they're regular in the sense that first person, all the people, right? The ending of the verb is always the same. Okay, but in this case, in the first person, there is a change that has to do with the sound of the vowel. Okay. So, let's get the example conhecer, right? Conhecer means to meet. So, if you follow the rules of a regular verb, you would write eu conheço pessoas, or muitas pessoas. So, I know a lot of people. Okay? Now, if you don't put the cedil on conheço, the pronunciation is actually conheco, okay? Because C and O have a K sound, whereas when you talk about CE here, the sound is like an S sound, okay? So you do need to change the conjugation in the first person to cedil to keep that sound. Okay, so you have to keep the same sound on the last syllables in this case. All right, so for the second verb in our list, we have reagir. Okay, so it means to react. So it's kind of a similar situation, right? So if you're going to say I react to I don't know, fights. Eu. If you were going to follow the same like a regular conjugation, you would write something like this. Eu reajo a brigas. Okay? But we have a problem here. Okay? If you write it like this, you are actually saying eu reago abrigas. So you are changing the sound from j to the sound of g, and you cannot do that, okay? So what you have to do in this case, let me see if it let me open. You have to change the G to a J. Eu reajo a brigas. Okay? So let me just not forget the accent here. Muito bem. And then we also have the situation that you have a verb that has the GU plus a vowel, okay? Typically E and I, okay? So in this case, for example, the verb seguir, which is to follow. If you're going to say, I follow a certain person, okay? In this case, it will change quite a bit. Because the spelling G-U and then plus I or E it's a G sound, okay? So let me explain to you before I give you the conjugation. Let me give you a quick explanation. So, if you want to say the sounds ga, ge, gi, go, gu in Portuguese, spelling-wise would be ga, ge, gi, go, gu, okay? To keep the same sound. You have to do this because if you don't put the U in between G and E and G and I, the sound would be J or G. So you would say ga, je, gi, go, gu. So you're changing sounds, okay? So for this reason, when you conjugate the first person of the verb seguir, you have to change from GU, which is a G sound, into only G to maintain the G sound, all right? Now, this verb is quite interesting because it's also a stem changing verb type 1. So you also need to change the vowel on the penultimate syllabus, okay? So you would say, for I follow, eu sigo. Okay, so you changed it here, the first one, and also on the G. Okay, so I hope this clarifies a little bit the stem changing verbs explanation, but feel free to ask me any questions you may have in class. Okay, thank you so much.